Hey, welcome in. Well, we have another in our series looking at the articles of Victor Davis Hanson. These seem to be quite popular, and if you enjoy this, there's a whole bunch of them in the Victor Davis Hanson playlist on my channel. So you can check those out if you like this. Anyway, it says the bug has radically disrupted American habits and behavior. What's next for us? Now, you can pretty much just graft this onto any English-speaking country or just Western civilization in general. Anyway, as a general rule, any business or activity that does not bother, judge, or lecture Americans and instead allows them to work or relax in peace is preferred. And yes, people do prefer not to be hectored constantly by Nike or sports teams or just in general. They want businesses to do what they are asking of businesses and nothing more. But anyway, what does Victor have to say about this? It starts, the bug, widespread quarantines, an unprecedented self-induced recession, and unchecked rioting, looting, and protesting, all in a presidential election year, are radically disrupting Americans' habits and behavior. Rents, home prices, and office occupancy rates in major cities, especially on the two coasts, are dropping fast. Techies and young professionals have discovered they can work from home without paying sky-high housing costs in order to be close to the office. Here we have an article from Forbes. New Yorkers are leaving the city in droves. Here's why they're moving and where they're going. Now, this is from September 2019. Okay, so a year ago. And it says here, 1 million people have fled New York City and the tri-state area, which encompasses New Jersey, Connecticut, and Long Island, in the last 9 years. Almost 300 people are moving out of the area per day. This trend is not exclusive to the New York metropolitan area. Many similar regions are seeing their residents migrate to other states. Los Angeles, Chicago, Washington, D.C., and San Francisco, as well as Connecticut's Hartford, Bridgeport, and New Haven, have all experienced a substantial exodus of people. Now, this is from before the coup. Those are also all Democratic strongholds, I believe, by the way. So that's only accelerated with the lockdowns. But anyway, let's move on. Those more fortunate wonder why they should get bogged down with commutes and urban traffic, or navigate city sidewalks amid homelessness, crime, racial tensions, and urban unrest, when they can make as much money while staying distant in quieter landscapes, while taking the voting habits that made the places they're moving from so bad in the first place. Keep in mind, again, that was from a year ago, before all the stuff that's happening now. But anyway, let's continue. Who would have ever believed that housing prices in picturesque San Francisco would be falling while house prices in pedestrian Sacramento and Fresno are soaring? And, a tech obviously would make it easier for people, to, for instance, work from home. And also there's new entrepreneurial opportunities where you can work from home. But, if a city like San Francisco, which is a fairly unique place, if it wasn't suffering from the homelessness, the drug addiction, violence, crime, in the levels that it is now, it might be somewhat of a different story in that example. Anyway, it continues. Worries about the bug in high-density cities and unreliable city services add to the unhappiness. Residents want less dependence on mass transit and elevator living. Constant human contact is seen as risky rather than desirous. Oh, and I forgot. I just want to show you this too before we move too far from San Francisco. San Francisco's human feces problem. There's an app for that. Yes, there's an app that can show you where human feces are on the streets. And apparently it's everywhere. That's the answer. It's everywhere. So you don't even need the app. That's something that could make being crammed into a city less desirous. But anyway, let's continue. Many of the people who have never before owned firearms are no longer clamoring for gun control. A man's home is now becoming his armed castle. That's an interesting shift, isn't it? And apparently most of these are liberals that are buying guns. The first-time owners. Let's see. As a general rule, any business or activity that does not bother, judge, or lecture Americans and instead allows them to work or relax in peace is preferred. that may explain why Zoom and Skype use is soaring, while TV ratings for the woke NBA and NFL are down. So we've got something on this too. NBA Finals ratings were officially the lowest in modern history. Just going to interrupt for 1 second to say, if you like this content, subscribe so you can see more. Thanks a lot. And there has been a downward trend, but I mean, if you look at between 2019 and 2020, the difference in the numbers for the games, game one, 13.5. And there was no LeBron in the finals, I believe, in 2019. If you look at the average was 15 million. And then this year, 7.4. So, basically half. The ratings were cut in half. And that's when there was actually more eyes that were available to watch that. So that's pretty astounding. That feels like maybe a cultural shift to me. And let's continue. Why are Amazon and Walmart booming while smaller businesses are going broke? Largely because home delivery better serves those who are barricaded at home, terrified both of the virus and government reaction to it. Now, the convenience of Amazon was always going to eat into the mom and pop business because it is so insanely convenient, even if it's, I guess, kind of immoral maybe. I don't know. But certainly the current health situation around the world hasn't helped with that at all, especially if you're terrified and barricaded into your home. Anyway, family businesses are not vertically integrated. They have few cash reserves and no special insider redemptions from government officials. How ironic is it, in that our quest to become safe and in control of our own destinies, we empower the anonymity of huge conglomerates and erode the viability of reliable, service-friendly mom-and-pop stores. Yeah, I mean, it feels like something worth preserving, doesn't it? But, I don't think your average mom-and-pop store can afford to buy the Washington Post. So there's that. And here, this is quite amusing. For the first time in their careers, many teachers and professors are careful not to go off topic and rant to their high school and college students. Their video streams are not only seen by captive student audiences, but occasionally peeked in on by parents and taxpayers who pay their salaries. And I have something on that as well. Philadelphia public school teacher worries about conservative parents listening in on virtual classes. Well, why would they be worried about conservative parents if they're not basically indoctrinating students into left-wing politics and ideas? Will students revolt over borrowing money simply to watch lectures on their basement computers? So not exactly the campus experience that they were hoping for. Will they be less likely to vote in November when they are isolated at home, rather than congregating on campus near polling places and subject to constant peer pressure to vote, and to do so in predictable ways? And by predictable, we mean a Democrat. And this is an interesting thing here, which, I see in the future a continued move to online learning just in general, just because it can be a lot cheaper. Advanced education now is so expensive. But anyway, with college revenues dropping, will ambitious promises to hire more diversity administrators, build more self-segregated racial theme houses, and increase campus social services be seen as just more costly overhead that shorts classroom teaching? Yes, I think that's going to happen. Yeah, especially with the fallout from basically shutting down the world economy to some large extent. A lot of the stuff they're doing on college campuses is just superfluous. And when you have a lot of people applying who are just thinking, look, I just need that piece of paper to get a decent job. I don't care about the rest of it. Yeah. But just on that note of all the diversity stuff, which doesn't seem to actually promote what they claim it does, here's from the Observer. Do colleges actually welcome segregation on campus? Well, it turns out they actually do, which is really weird. On the day before its 2019 general commencement exercises, Harvard University will hold 2 segregated ceremonies, one for students of color and the other for Latinos. It says, who would have believed that 65 years after the Supreme Court ruled that racial segregation of children in public schools was unconstitutional, many colleges across the country now encourage separate but equal segregation on campus. Now, I don't know, is that supposed to be progressive? Doesn't feel progressive. That feels regressive and intentionally divisive. But it looks like we're getting close to the end now. During the pandemic, government has become more intrusive and yet seemingly more impotent and incompetent. Pick a month, and some government official issues yet more contradictory orders on mask wearing, social distancing, and lockdowns, all to be soon reversed. Yeah, and this is something that erodes people's confidence in government. And not surprisingly, the worst cases of all of this seem to be happening in places like New York and in California, where they have to be constantly on edge, to constantly prepared to do the exact opposite of whatever Trump says. Or at least it looks like that to me. Let's see. Taxes stayed high, and yet urban services got worse. Increasingly, American city dwellers don't always count on the power going on when they flip the switch, or the bus and train always showing up, or the police always answering 911 calls. Here's something from the New York Times. California expresses frustration as blackouts enter fourth day. And blackouts, is that really a first world thing? It's kind of amazing. Anyway, we're almost right at the end now. We still do not know the full consequences of these radical changes in American life, especially whether they will continue after the bug abates and quarantines end. The cultural currents are often contradictory. They defy easy political analysis and seem at times counterintuitive. But there is one historical constant. When institutions and politicians cannot accommodate radically changed circumstances, people will no longer value institutions and politicians. In their place, citizens will seek to ensure their own livelihoods, leisure, and safety in ways that are more reliable and affordable, with their circumstances in their own hands rather than in those of distant others. And their adjustments won't always be calm or polite. Now that strikes a rather ominous tone, doesn't it? I think. And their adjustments won't always be calm or polite. And what does that mean? It means unrest. I mean, I think it's really hard to tie a bow around this one at the end of it here because, yeah, there is so much uncertainty. And while, you've seen, tech and most of the media, I mean, Trump gets, 93% negative coverage in mainstream media? Well, we've seen those things obviously becoming more and more biased over time. It's really been ramped up, really with the New York Post being censored by Twitter and Facebook as an example. It's really been ramped up to levels that I'm not sure anybody would have really thought were possible. Just blatant bias of a level that nobody thought was possible or expected. And as I say, a lot of these problems can be graphed onto, certainly any English-speaking country, but generally Western civilization as a whole, because everybody's affected by what's happened economically, and that is going to affect things like services and education. Certainly the media is left-wing biased pretty much everywhere. I mean, if you look at, what are basically the two state media outlets in the UK and in Canada, the CBC and the BBC, they are left. They are left. I think they're pretty proudly left. And they do try and shape opinion in a leftist direction. Certainly people leaving cities is a commonality as well. And as I say, you can't really put a bow on it. I mean, there are forces that are trying to, powerful forces that are trying to influence people. Big tech is really putting its finger on the scale. And they are going to look to help political parties that they feel will further their own interests in whatever country they're in. Why wouldn't they? I mean, if they can get away with it in the U.S., why wouldn't they do it everywhere else? But anyway, as I say, I can't really put tie a neat little bow around this thing. It's just, we're going to find out what happens. Anyway, thanks a lot for checking in. Please subscribe, like, and share. That really helps me get around the algorithm. If you just like to listen, there's the podcast, Radio Baloney. It's on pretty much every platform, including Spotify. Thanks a lot. I'll see you next time.